are building a business that will be bringing the influencer economy and marketing in general for the travel industry to the next level. I'm really excited about that, and we will talk a lot about it. But can you please tell us a story of your first day in immigration, or maybe the first week, because you now live in Paris, but you're from Hawaii, and you seem to live on those different continents. So how is it going for you?
It's honestly going great. I've moved to France initially 9 years ago. So that first week was definitely a really special one. I remember it clear as day. It was January 2015, where I was taking a bet on myself going to the American University of Paris to get my master's degree in global communications and just sort of leaving, not behind, but just moving forward in this new direction with a dream of wanting to permanently live abroad. And my dream at the time was to be working in global marketing in Paris, and we'll dive deeper into that. But I definitely was able to realize that dream. It was also the first week that I met my now co-founder of the marketing technology startup that I'm the CEO and co-founder of now. So it was a very special week that started the journey that I'm on now.
That's fascinating. And I can ask you about why you wanted to live abroad and why it was Paris. That's probably a question that you already
Mm,
answered many, many times in your life, because that's probably the first question that we get after our name. But can you also paint the picture of that first day, how you landed and how
mm.
was it? What did you feel? And was there excitement or was there fear? Was it a bit of both? What would you tell yourself 9 years back, now that you have lived this life, have this part of the experience, so that Devon could maybe feel a bit more relaxed?
I would definitely tell her that she's on the right path and that it is possible. It's one of those things where you kind of jump into the unknown and you just have to believe that having a life abroad, living this life that you feel deep down is meant for you, that it is possible and that the stars will align to make it happen. But I would say that first day, definitely a mix of pure excitement and joy that it was finally happening. Definitely a bit of healthy fear in the sense that your senses are really awakened and that it's more, even like the notion of anxiety, if you place it where it's meant to be, which is actually just, an extra oomph of energy in the sense that your body is aware that there's change happening and that you can see it as actually being a source of excitement. And yeah, I would say Paris is also just one of those cities where it's so beautiful and very like sensory, activating, that I was just, walking around the city, going to my first orientation class at university, and was also just had this sort of sense of calm that this is where I was supposed to be. I'm very sort of I have like that type of awareness within myself where I'll do like a sort of quick gauge of, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And kind of, that notion of like doing a gut check. And I definitely felt like I was where I was supposed to be at that time.
That's fascinating. My own migration story started with moving to study abroad as well. I moved after
Hmm.
getting a degree in languages, first language being Italian. So I moved to Italy and I applied to the university. I had this whole complicated process. I was not using any of the programs like Erasmus. I just applied as someone local as well, and it was so much, so many steps. I
Hmm.
remember how hard it was, and I admire myself for that strength. And I remember those first days and months while speaking the language, knowing a lot about the culture, having prepared for the bureaucracy that I needed, the paperwork I needed to do. It was still so confusing sometimes. It was weird, and it was this kind of weird deorientation in the space as well. And when you go to the university, the classes, when you start making those, routes, the habits, things that you need to do, to have in order to have some kind of normalcy in your life. Now looking back at that, it's just so interesting how we get to the space and we have a lot of optimism about it, and sometimes it's much harder than it is, or maybe we have this blissful ignorance, and then we realize, oh my god, like now that I have changed countries and I've lived in other places, I was so naive and I was so, blissfully ignorant about so many things that could go wrong. So it's fascinating. Maybe it's, I don't know, being a student as well. And I think things changed as well now in general for international students. But it's wonderful just how the age and being a student, probably it's one of the best ways to immigrate, because then you're surrounded by people, you have a purpose, you have some kind of vision of your own life, because you do it for something. Like you said, you wanted to work globally and you wanted, to have this access to the world like that. It was very similar for me as well. So how has this vision changed, if at all, for you?
I would say, yeah, definitely the first day compared to what it means to actually be able to live, work, stay in another country are definitely starkly different. Some in the best way, of course, as long as have that commitment to yourself, and if it feels like this is where you're supposed to be, sticking to it. Because as you know, and I'm sure others listening know, that the experience of moving abroad can be extremely painful. That blissful ignorance can definitely quickly dissipate, and you're having to deal with the aspects of loneliness. I'm from the place that I chose to move to was literally on the complete other opposite side of planet Earth. So to get to my home, it takes about 24 hours easily in terms of overall travel time. 12-hour time difference. So even being able to call your loved ones, at least you would know what time it was, because it's exactly the opposite. The differences and the nuances of how things are done. France definitely has a reputation sometimes of being challenging in different ways. But the amazing part is also just, the growth that comes with that. I have a really deepened sense of flexibility in how my day might have gone, right? Some days, and that's kind of also the beauty of living in a city like Paris. It's not structured, and life isn't meant to just be catered to you sometimes as it is in America, and which is actually can be pretty beautiful. You might see an argument in the street, you might see have the most beautiful conversation with someone on a bench that you've never met before. And it's a lot of ebbs and flows that can really expand your flexibility as a human being of how you might interpret a day or a flow of a day going, which is really beautiful. This human existence can also be pretty painful. Immigration definitely puts you in a position where you can sort of sit with it if you choose to do that and come out the other side. And I would say that becoming a French citizen definitely, and every single step towards making that possible, definitely I grew as a person, and it's also skills that I've taken into my business and what's required to be a startup founder as well.
Yeah, we can make a lot of parallels with life in general. This is just us learning to survive, and it's not a small task. We have to deal with a lot of challenges, and what you mentioned, the very first one is the loneliness, which I only realized was a big thing for me after being alone for a while still surrounded by a lot of people. And it's not because you don't have people around, it's the differences is your specific challenges, or maybe even your personal things, right? Like you need to let go of certain traits of personality. You face the reality that challenges your own habits, your own mindset, your own views on things, and you can't really move on without letting go of certain parts of yourself. And sometimes it's painful indeed, because those have been parts of your personality, or maybe they are, I don't know, something that people recognize you for and love you for back where you're from, and then you can't be that same girl that they remember. So it's very weird kind of loneliness and very weird kind of growth as well, which we understand a lot and we talk about it a lot, and also other migrants and our friends, right, that we have these conversations with. Only us can understand each other in that sense. So thank you for sharing those beautiful feelings and emotions and stories. I deeply resonate with them. So I heard that you bring those qualities, those pieces of knowledge into the business as well. Can you tell us a bit more about the business and the purpose and what it teaches you now? Because you are also moving a lot thanks to this business.
Yes, definitely. So I would say even the genesis of my business, it all starts with the process of immigration. As I said, I met on the first day of orientation at university is when I met my co-founder. So that was definitely, serendipitous in that sense. And it came from the experience actually of being a student living abroad, trying to plan trips with friends, and then paired with my professional experience of working in global marketing, specifically social media and influence for beauty and luxury brands at an agency called BBDO. And sort of pairing that and understanding that there was a problem that some brands were facing, specifically in the travel sector. They're having a difficult time in terms of measuring the ROI of those collaborations. And, you know, if it wasn't for the process of moving abroad and having this experience of working in a different industry, the concept of this business wouldn't exist. So I will have to thank Paris and this journey for contributing to where we are now with the business and everything, but and also taking in skills from the process of becoming a French citizen and immigrating. It's extremely volatile and unstable at times. Being a startup founder, you really it's almost excruciatingly painful becoming comfortable with the discomfort, which I know is again a very, especially if you're learning a new language, you're having to constantly put yourself out there, be okay with failure, iterate and improve, even if it's just ordering something at a restaurant or getting your groceries, meeting someone for the first time, constantly trying, failing, iterating, improving, if that's something that you're wanting to do in terms of improving your way of moving through that society through language. For me personally, French language was really special to me. I found it so beautiful. And it was something that I really wanted to be able to not necessarily master, but get to a space where, being able to use it in different spaces, if it was socially, if it was professionally, articulating an argument in another language, all of those skills I've been able to bring back into my business, as well as the relationships that I formed while working in that industry in Paris. But and to tie it back to entrepreneurship, there are a lot of parallels. And I would even encourage, investors to look at immigrants or people that have lived abroad and moved to another country, because you're almost in a training camp for being prepared for this type of experience. And now we're in a space where I do need to be in multiple places at once. So based in Paris, but we have our US headquarters in Los Angeles. I was just in Hawaii for a startup accelerator program in travel technology, and that specializes in travel tech, SaaS, and AI. And then was just in San Francisco for an investor week. So, things just after becoming a French citizen, having that freedom, it was definitely, it opened a lot of doors for what was possible, even the sense of identity of when that place becomes integrated into who you are, being able to fluidly move through both of those spaces of who I am and where I am has been really special.
Yeah, you're touching upon something that is probably very familiar for many of us, and whether it is one other country that we live in or many more, it always adds something to our personality. And I feel honestly as a collection of those cultures as well at this point. I lived in Italy for 2 years, in Belgium for 3 years, now in Bulgaria it's almost 5 years, and everywhere it gave me certain skills, and everywhere I became, the next version of myself for one reason or another, professionally and personally. And I was talking to another guest, Fatou. We kind of arrived to this idea, how mothers sometimes put on their LinkedIn the motherhood as experience, as working experience. Same will be for us, because indeed we learned so many things that are those transferable skills. Like, I really love the idea of those parallels that you shared. It really is about that. It's about taking those lessons and seeing not only how you can apply it here, right? So I can maybe prepare one more paper next time for this migration office, even if they don't ask, because they might. But also, how can I apply this knowledge to other parts of my life? Because actually everything is similar, right? We have the same challenges, very similar challenges, because we work with people, we communicate with people, we are people, everything is about that. So when we learn how the world not like how the world works, so we figure it out, but at least we get some pieces of information which help us solve a challenge in this specific part of our lives, then it's possible that we can figure it out somewhere else. So I really like how you mentioned the investors and people who want to build something of their own. They have an idea, they have a vision, they have an ambition. They can actually do it also thanks to that. This is an experience that they can use as well, and also source from that experience, which I really like what you're saying. For me, it's been like that. Somehow I always end up working for immigrants, so for the well-being, for the integration, for the sense of community, for belonging of other immigrants, and of course it helps me too.
100%. Being able to take those experiences and apply them to your present, having a toolbox that has that many resources at your disposal is definitely something that's extremely valuable and can differentiate you over, a lot of people that might not have taken that chance on themselves, that, you'd be able to not only help guide yourself through whatever you're going through. I've also found that my experiences can be really helpful for others that might be dreaming of moving abroad and maybe not having, as many tools in their toolbox to know how to even approach it. Things around education, cost of living. There's so many different ways of living in different places, and what each of those pillars look like for different people. So it's being able to have those resources for yourself and share them with others is also really special.
So I wonder, because sometimes for many of us, the move to a different country is kind of definitive, right? There are certain reasons why we move, and we don't want to look back. There are other people that come back and they have this idea that they will be away for some time, and they can picture themselves only back home. And then there are people like you that seem to be able to know how to integrate those experiences, or at least, I don't know, have some kind of vision of contributing with everything that you are, that probably is coming back to that conversation of identity, right? In my native language, there is a saying, where you are born, this is where you're useful. And I honestly don't believe it. I don't think it's this black and white in that sense. I think we can be useful wherever we are useful. So how has this experience of moving a lot and living in two different places at the same time impacted your identity?
That's a beautiful question. I would say, and it's definitely a nuanced answer. It brings me back to when I was actually applying for French citizenship. I was working with a consultant, and he had asked me, with intention, a question around why are you French? And then each of my answers, I would say, well, I've lived here for 5 years, I've paid my taxes, I speak the language fluently. And he was like, those are all reasons for a resident card. Why are you French? And so it was coming down to the fundamentals of like identity that he was in fact training me, or helping me ask myself that question so that then I'd be able to confidently embody the understanding of myself of indeed I am French and becoming French through my own perspective of my own identity before I get the passport, if that makes sense. And that experience was pretty awesome and really powerful. I probably should reach out to him and just give him an update of and just say thank you because that specific moment in my life was very, very meaningful because it led me on a path to more deeply understanding that aspect of my identity and also owning it. You can definitely feel as someone that has moved to a new place, even if you've been there for a long time, that you'll never truly be, a member of that society. But being able to own that for yourself and understand why for yourself you are, Italian, Japanese, whatever that looks like for anyone, so that I can confidently say to myself first that I am French and this is why. So that was really beautiful. But it started me on another journey of understanding myself with my origins as well. I'm also part Native Hawaiian. And, Native Hawaiians have a very complicated relationship with identity and language as well. It was illegal to speak their native tongue at a point in history. They were a sovereign country and illegally overthrown by the United States. There's a diaspora of Hawaiian people in large part all over the United States, a lot of people in Las Vegas, a lot of people in California, in the South, because they can't afford to live in Hawaii. The notion of people being able to own that aspect of themselves, because most people that are Hawaiian are only part Hawaiian. And after becoming French, learning another language, assimilating into a new culture, it made me ask questions around, well, why don't I know how to speak Hawaiian fluently? Why do most people only know fragmented words here and there that are sort of woven into the local culture? It's been pretty beautiful in that aspect too, because it's helped me kind of start the reverse journey of getting to more deeply know my home culture. I'm now in the process of learning Hawaiian language. After I have some more time, I have this dream of going back to college and getting a degree in Hawaiian studies. It can be really beautiful because moving abroad can also help you have a deeper appreciation of where you come from. And I now through my business will be working with the one of the Hawaii tourism boards called the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau, where we're going to be working on sustainable, culturally, environmentally, and social economically sustainable itineraries for the islands of Oahu and Maui. So that's a really exciting step in the right direction since there's also a really complicated history with the tourism industry there. So being able to take your experiences and make a positive impact, if it's where you're from, if it's where you are, if it's, through having conversations like what we're doing, it can be pretty special.
I love that. This speaks a lot to my own personal story, and I'm not gonna go deep into that, but I'm from Ukraine, so there are a lot of things about identity and who you are right now for many of us. But what I'm thinking about, which will go to the other side of the conversation, which is the business, right? Your business and tourism as well. I think that migrants and expats are probably one of the best kinds of tourists, if not the best, because we're respectful. We understand that traveling is not living somewhere, and once we unlock the world, right? Like once we figure out that we actually can do this, we start traveling like crazy. It started for me like that. I travel, you just use all the opportunities because I didn't have those before, being from non-European country and then moving to Europe, it unlocked a lot of opportunities for me. So I traveled a lot, and now I'm going further and further. I'm really excited about the world in general. So I believe, that's my opinion, that we as someone who understands how it is to move around, we might be probably also the best customers or the best users of the platform. So can you tell us a bit more about how we can contribute, how we can help you deliver this vision and make this mission come to life?
Oh, I appreciate that question. Thank you. I would say, well, first you could go to landng.com, landng.com. that gives an overview of what we do and how we benefit brands, creators, influencers, and travelers. If you are a travel influencer, for example, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to help you through our technology. And for travelers, and especially migrant travelers, we are making it a lot easier for you to take inspiration or recommendations from influencers and brands that you follow and be able to essentially make travel recommendations or trip plans shoppable. So as easy as, instead of having to watch TikTok videos and Instagram reels and save them and then go into your Google Doc and then into your Google Maps and figure all of that out, we're really streamlining. We know that you can see your eyes rolling. It's we're very used to that because likely a lot of us are well traveled and enjoy the process of research, but from the traveler's perspective, we're just really streamlining being able to take those inspirations or recommendations from brands, influencers that we trust, and then being able to pretty seamlessly either book those recommendations, shop those recommendations, and then we also are part of the Google for Startups Cloud program. So we're working closely with their Google Maps team, and so it's all pretty much it should be it's a pretty seamless experience from the recommendation to actually taking the trip. And the intention for traveler users specifically is helping people live inspired lives through travel and making travel less laborious in terms of having to make sense of all the recommendations that we're getting and just make it a lot easier for people to be able to experience place. And in order to make that possible, we need to add value for brands and influencers and make it easier for them to collaborate. Really excited about what we have coming up. We're going to be focusing in two key markets to start. So Paris being one of them, as well as Hawaii, the collaboration that I mentioned prior. But definitely reach out to me. We can put my LinkedIn, Devon D'Angelo, and if there's anyone that would like to learn more or be one of our first users, I would absolutely love that.
That's amazing. Yeah, when you said Google Maps and all the pins, I very vivid image of me being in Brussels a couple of months ago, showing to my team that I was going to Paris and all of the pins, all of the plans, and it's like a big mess. It makes a bit more sense to me, but still it was so complicated. Just like, okay, on Wednesday I'm gonna do this part of the city and this and this and this, and I wish someone gave me a reminder to register to book a ticket to the Dior gallery, because I arrived there and there's a humongous queue. Of course I can't make it. Yeah, it's it's a big issue. So please make it work for us, because otherwise it's again a lot of labor, as you said. And it's supposed to be a holiday, right?
Exactly. Well, and everyone has their own, version of how they like to approach that too. If there's the people that like to plan, dot their I's, cross their T's, do every single thing possible before they get there, to then, there are other people that I call the free flow traveler, where it's like, okay, I'm going to do the Google Maps, so then I'm going to see how I feel when I get there, because I don't want it to be too much work. And it can be the same person depending, on the context of the trip. And so, but being able to work with the step one of, where are they finding their recommendations? And really for millennials and Gen Z, almost half of the recommendations, at least from the research that we found, it's coming from platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And so starting with doing one thing and doing that well, and then we'll be able to hopefully be able to expand over time in terms of how we're helping solve for travelers in the future.
Sounds amazing. I'm really excited about this. So, to start wrapping up, I wanted to maybe highlight a couple of lessons, because that's the point of the conversation as well, to see if there are some things that we can recommend or at least just share with people so they don't have to make the same mistakes or can avoid certain things. So, I really liked when you said anxiety can be the energy, because this is probably how we feel most of the time. And yes, it's scary, yes, it's challenging, and we still can use it to push ourselves forward. There is a reason why we do this, there is a reason why we are so uncomfortable, and we deserve that freedom, that flexibility that you shared, you learned about. yourself, and you learn how to do in your life and business at work. That was really beautiful, and I recognize it in myself as well. And then I really liked the idea of drawing the parallels and having those skills transferred in different contexts of our lives, because indeed it makes sense. That's probably how we're supposed to learn what life is because it makes more sense like that. But also it makes our lives much easier, and then we can be the rock stars that we are in one context in some other context as well. So would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I would say to complement those two beautiful bullet points would be the concept of freedom. Freedom looks different to different people, but I would say for migrants, freedom, at least for me, is the freedom to be where I feel I need to be at any point in time. And also the understanding the privilege of the passports that I hold as an American and French citizen, and being able to have that freedom is definitely a privilege. So also just having a sense of gratitude is something that I try to integrate in this process, because I'm a firm believer that life will meet you wherever you are, and if you're supposed to be somewhere or do something, the stars will align for that. But as I would say, especially in these difficult times for many people around the world, sitting with gratitude for the freedom.
Yes, I love that. And it's so easy to
Mm.
forget about it once you have, you reach the next level. And I saw it as well in myself now that I look back at some of the people from neighboring countries with Ukraine, how much less of freedom they have due to past years' events. And I forgot how it was for me. So that, like, no matter where you are, I think there are certain things that you can be grateful for. And yeah, that freedom is one of the things. Thank you so much, Devon. It's been such a beautiful conversation, and I really love your ideas, the way you see the world. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we will leave the links to the website and to your LinkedIn so that people can reach out and they can participate in this beautiful project. Thank you.
Thank you.